Hi, hello, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. Now, what was I talking about? I'm V Noir, and this episode I am going to be talking about one thing and one thing only, and that is the Ugly Stepsister, which came out this year. It's a Norwegian film. It is essentially a dark retelling of Cinderella, but through the perspective of one of the stepsisters, while Cinderella's story is kind of happening adjacent to hers. Uh, I mean, I remember when it was kind of getting promoted. This is when the Substance had came out, and it had gotten like a really big following and everything. So people were like, "Oh, this is just like the Substance," and I didn't really see that. But I think people were just comparing the fact that they're both movies that involve gore and dealing with uh body image and body issues. But honestly, like when I watch the movie, I would compare this, or a good companion movie to this would be Pearl, which is a part of this like whole series of movies. X was first, Pearl is a prequel to X, and then Maxine XXX came out last year, and that's like the end of the series, I believe. There might be a fourth movie, I'm not sure. But either way, I thought I would start this pod with me reading the Brothers Grimm fairy tale, like the original Cinderella story, um, for the pod, for the audience, just to let people hear that story as it was, I forgot what it's called, as it was written down, essentially. Because with the Brothers Grimm, stories sort of have more of an oral history. So, stories would be passed down as is tradition through people telling it, and then the next generation just remembers the story and then tells it, and so on and so forth. So the Grimm brothers went around and sort of collected all of these fairy tales and things and put it together in this anthology, essentially. And that's how we get a lot of stuff like Cinderella, Princess and the Frog, things like that. And it's like that storytelling back then was supposed to be was supposed to act as like a warning, um and there was like a moral. You would learn morals essentially at the end of it, like, oh, hey, if you do this, if you're a bad person, bad things will happen to you, essentially. Stuff like that. um but anyway, let me get into reading Cinderella. There once was a rich man whose wife lay sick, and when she felt her end drawing near, she called to her only daughter to come near her bed and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and God will always take care of you, and I will look down upon you from heaven, and will be with you." And then she closed her eyes and died. The maiden went every day to her mother's grave and wept, and was always pious and good. When the winter came, the snow covered the grave with a white covering, and when the sun came in the early spring and melted it away, the man took to himself another wife. The new wife brought two daughters home with her, and they were beautiful and fair in appearance, but at heart were black and ugly. And then began very evil times for the poor stepdaughter. "Is this stupid creature to sit in the same room with us?" said they. "Those who eat food must earn it. She is nothing but a kitchen maid." They took away her pretty dresses, and put on her an old gray kirtle, and gave her wooden shoes to wear. "Just look now at the proud princess, how she is decked out," cried they, laughing, and they sent her into the kitchen. There she was obliged to do heavy work from morning to night, get up early in the morning, draw water, make the fires, cook and wash. Besides that, the sisters did their utmost to torment her, mocking her, and strewing peas and lentils among the ashes and setting her to pick them up. In the evenings, when she was quite tired out with her hard day's work, she had no bed to lay on, but was obliged to rest on the hearth among the cinders. And because she always looked dusty and dirty, as if she had slept in the cinders, they named her Cinderella. It happened one day that the father went to the fair, and he asked his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Fine clothes," one said. "Pearls and jewels," said the other. "But what will you have, Cinderella?" he said. "The first twig, father, that strikes against your hat on the way home. That is what I should like you to bring me." So he brought the two stepdaughters fine clothes, pearls, and jewels, and on his way back, as he rode through a green lane, a hazel twig struck against his hat, and he broke it off and carried it home with him. And when he reached home, he gave to the stepdaughters what they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the hazel twig. She thanked him, and went to her mother's grave, and planted this twig there, weeping so bitterly that the tears fell upon it and watered it, and it flourished and became a fine tree. Cinderella went to see it 3 times a day, and wept and prayed, and each time a white bird rose up from the tree, and if she uttered any wish, the bird brought her whatever she had wished. Now it came to pass that the king ordained a festival that should last for 3 days, and to which all the beautiful young women of that country were bidden, so that the king's son might choose a bride from among them. When the two stepdaughters heard that they too were bidden to appear, they felt very pleased, and they called Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair, brush our shoes, and make our buckles fast. We are going to the wedding feast at the king's castle." When she heard this, Cinderella could not help crying, for she too would have liked to go dance, and she begged her stepmother to allow her. "What, you, Cinderella?" she said. "And all your dust and your dirt. You want to go to the festival? You have no dress and no shoes. You want to dance?" But as she persisted in asking, at last the stepmother said, "I have strewed a dish full of lentils in the ashes, and if you pick them all up again in 2 hours, you may go with us." Then the maiden went to the back door that led into the garden, and called out, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." Then there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and after them some turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering, and they alighted among the ashes, and the doves nodded with their heads, and began to pick-pack, pick-pack, and then all the others began to pick-pack, pick-pack, and put all the good grains into the dish. Before an hour was over, all was done, and they flew away. Then the maiden brought the dish to her stepmother, feeling joyful, and thinking that now she should go to the feast, but the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, you have no proper clothes, and you do not know how to dance, and you would be laughed at." And when Cinderella cried for disappointment, she added, "If you pick 2 dishes full of lentils out of the ashes, nice and clean, you shall go with us." Thinking to herself, "For that is not possible." When she had strewed 2 dishes full of lentils among the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in the ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." So there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and then some turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the other birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering, and they alighted among the ashes, and the doves nodded with their heads and began to pick-pack, pick-pack, and then all the others began to pick-pack, pick-pack, and put all the good grains into the dish. And before half an hour was over, it was all done, and they flew away. Then the maiden took the dishes to the stepmother, feeling joyful, and thinking that now she should go with them to the feast. But she said, "All this is of no good to you. You could not come with us, for you have no proper clothes, and cannot dance. You would put us to shame." Then she turned her back on poor Cinderella, and made haste to set out with her 2 proud daughters. And as there was no one left in the house, Cinderella went to her mother's grave under the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird threw down a dress of gold and silver, and a pair of slippers embroidered with silk and silver, and in all haste she put on the dress and went to the festival. But her stepmother and sisters did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, she looked so beautiful in her golden dress. Of Cinderella they never thought at all, and supposed that she was sitting at home and picking the lentils out of the ashes. The king's son came to meet her and took her by the hand and danced with her, and he refused to stand up with anyone else so that he might not be obliged to let go of her hand. And when anyone came to claim it, he answered, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, but the prince said he would go with her to take care of her, for he wanted to see where the beautiful maiden lived. But she escaped him and jumped up into the pigeon house. Then the prince waited until the father came and told him the strange maiden had jumped into the pigeon house. The father thought to himself, "It surely cannot be Cinderella," and called for axes and hatchets, and had the pigeon house cut down, but there was no one in it. And when they entered the house, there sat Cinderella in her dirty clothes among the cinders, and a little oil lamp burnt dimly in the chimney. For Cinderella had been very quick, and had jumped out of the pigeon house again, and had run to the hazel bush, and there she had taken off her beautiful dress and had laid it on the grave, and the bird had carried it away again. And then she put on her little gray kirtle again, and had sat down in the kitchen among the cinders. The next day, when the festival began anew, and the parents and stepsisters had gone to it, Cinderella went to the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird cast down a still more splendid dress than on the day before, and when she appeared in it among the guests, everyone astonished at her beauty. The prince had been waiting until she came, and he took her hand and danced with her alone. And when anyone else came to invite her, he said, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, and the prince followed her, for he wanted to see what house she belonged. But she broke away from him, and ran into the garden at the back of the house. There stood a fine large tree, bearing splendid pears. She leapt as lightly as a squirrel among the branches, and the prince did not know what had become of her. So he waited until the father came, and then he told him that the strange maiden had rushed from him, and that he thought she had gone up into the pear tree. The father thought to himself, "It surely cannot be Cinderella," and he called for an axe and felled the tree, but there was no one in it. And when they went into the kitchen, there sat Cinderella among the cinders as usual, for she had got down the other side of the tree, and had taken back her beautiful clothes to the bird on the hazel bush, and had put on her old gray kirtle again. On the third day, when the parents and the stepchildren had set off, Cinderella went again to her mother's grave, and said to the tree, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird cast down a dress, the like of which had never been seen for the splendor and brilliancy, and the slippers that were of gold. And when she appeared in this dress at the feast, nobody knew what to say for wonderment. The prince danced with her alone, and if anyone else asked her, he answered, "She is my partner." And when it was evening, Cinderella wanted to go home, and the prince was about to go with her, when she ran past him so quickly that he could not follow her. But he had laid out a plan, and had caused all the steps to be spread with pitch, so that as she rushed down them the left shoe of the maiden remained sticking in it. The prince picked it up, and saw that it was of gold, and very small and slender. The next morning he went to the father, and told him that none should be his bride, save the one whose foot the golden shoe should fit. Then the two sisters were very glad, because they had pretty feet. The eldest went to her room to try on the shoe, and her mother stood by, but she could not get her great toe into it, for the shoe was too small. Then their mother handed her a knife, and said, "Cut the toe off, for when you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." So the girl cut her toe off, squeezed her foot into the shoe, concealed the pain, and went down to the prince. Then he took her with him on his horse as his bride, and rode off. They had to pass by the grave, and there sat the two pigeons on the hazel bush, and cried, "There they go! There they go! There is blood on her shoe. The shoe is too small, not the right bride at all." Then the prince looked at her shoe, and saw the blood flowing, and he turned his horse around, and took the false bride home again, saying she was not the right one, and that the other sister must try on the shoe. So she went into her room to do so, and got her toes comfortably in, but her heel was too large. Then her mother handed her a knife, saying, "Cut off a piece of your heel. When you are a queen, you will never have to go on foot." So the girl cut off a piece of her heel, and thrust her foot into the shoe, concealed the pain, and went down to the prince, who took his bride before him on his horse, and rode off. When they passed by the hazel bush, the two pigeons sat there and cried, "There they go! There they go! There is blood on her shoe. The shoe is too small, not the right bride at all." Then the prince looked at her foot, and saw how the blood was flowing from the shoe, and staining the white stocking. He then turned his horse round, and brought the false bride home again. "This is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" No, said the man. Only my dead wife left behind her a little stunted Cinderella. It is impossible that she can be the bride. But the king's son ordered her to be sent for. But the mother said, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. I could not let her be seen." But he would have her fetched, and so Cinderella had to appear. First she washed her face and hands quite clean, and went in and curtsied to the prince, who held out to her the golden shoe. Then she sat down on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and slipped it into the golden one, which fitted it perfectly. And when she stood up and the prince looked into her face, he knew again the beautiful maiden that had danced with him, and he cried, "This is the right bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were thunderstruck and grew pale with anger, but he put Cinderella before him on his horse and rode off. And as they passed the hazel bush, the two white pigeons cried, "There they go, there they go! No blood on her shoe. The shoe's not too small. The right bride is she, after all." And when they had thus cried, they came flying after and perched on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right, the other on the left, and so remained. And when the wedding with the prince was appointed to be held, and the false sisters came, hoping to curry favor and to take part in the festivities. So as the bridal procession went to the church, the eldest walked on the right side, and the younger on the left, and the pigeons picked out an eye of each of them. And as they returned, the elder sister was on the left side, and the younger one on the right, and the pigeons picked out the other eye of each of them. And so they were condemned to go blind for the rest of their days because of their wickedness and falsehood. And that's it. It's kind of funny because I feel like, especially with Disney and like the Disney canon of Cinderella, the dad ends up dying, and I'm like, he might as well have been dead anyway because he was a useless piece of shit who was just like, whatever. I'm gonna let my new wife and her daughters bully my firstborn daughter. Like, what the fuck? Piece of shit. And I'm also like, when they the part where they turn pale from anger, I'm like, yeah, they turn pale from anger, and also the blood loss from cutting off body parts. um which was a lot. Um like, what else happened? Yeah, no, I mean, there was like a repetitiveness, but I think, again, this being like something that was originally something that was only told orally, the repetitiveness would have just made it more memorable. Because otherwise, it's like reading it, it's like, why am I reading this? Like, why is this happening again? And it was happening in threes, which is, I love the number three. I love odd numbers more than even numbers. That's just me. But yes, I definitely wanted to start the pod with the telling of the story, specifically because the movie does sort of have the scene where the sister cuts off part of her foot to fit in Cinderella's shoe. Crazy. But yeah, let me get into the plot and everything now of The Ugly Stepsister. Now let me get into the plot summary or whatever. Or I'm gonna read a summary of the description and then kind of go over like what happens in the movie basically. So determined to outshine her beautiful stepsister, Elvira resorts to extreme measures to win the prince's heart in this dark reimagining of the Cinderella fairy tale. Simple enough, right? Right. Um, it definitely starts with the new mom, the stepmom. Her name is Rebecca, essentially, and her daughter's Elvira, who's going to be the ugly stepsister, and Alma, who's the younger sister. They're in a wagon and they're heading to their new home with their new dad and new sibling, who's this much older man uh, named Otto. And their sister's name is Agnes. She actually has a really long name, but I should have wrote it down because I'm like, why does no one have it written anywhere? And I don't really feel like going through the movie because I watched this originally on Shudder. I'm like, I could do it right now, but I'm like, I'm in the middle of this. Her having a long name doesn't mean anything anyway. But yeah, so it's like basically it's the sisters and the new mom show up. They meet Otto, they meet Agnes, they see the house, it's gorgeous. They're like, okay, cool, new home, new house. And then, of course, day after the wedding, they're all around the kitchen. I mean, they're all around the dinner table eating wedding cake. And Otto's like, I'm gonna throw this cake in your face, Rebecca. And Rebecca's like, don't do that shit. And then he's like, well, I'll just throw it on the ugly one. And I'm like, God damn, she's not even that ugly. She's wearing braces. Like, damn, that's crazy. I mean, I don't know why I said she's not even that ugly. She isn't ugly at all. Like, she isn't. But all these other people are like more attractive than her or whatever. So it's like all this like weird stuff. Essentially, he literally throws this cake in Elvira's face and then he like passes out and dies. And then after they don't actually know anything about it. This whole fucking movie, they never hold a funeral for this man. And what is it? It was like 4 moons that the the ball the ball for the prince finding a wife. So it was like a whole event. It wasn't just a ball. It was like no, it was just a ball. But either way, so 4 moons. I'm like, that's like 6 months or something. Um, this man was rotting, not underground, above ground, and we see it later on. Never gave this man a funeral. Jesus Christ. Just bury him, please. Is what I kept saying whenever we saw his body. Anyway, I'll get to that. So Agnes is just like, well, at least he might have died, but at least y'all have the money to hold a funeral. And she's saying this to Elvira. And Elvira is like, oh my god, they don't have any money to her mom as the mom is getting talked to all these people that are like, we're gonna seize this, seize this, seize this because you don't have any money. I was like, damn, that fucking sucks. So now you have a dead husband. And so now you're a widow and you assumed you were gonna marry into wealth, but you didn't. And now you have another daughter to feed. I'm like, she has money, but I don't know how much money she has, but she definitely has money because all the treatments. Oh, actually, okay. It's not that she has money. Okay, so first Elvira has braces. And then she's like, we got to do something about your nose, which is so fucked up. And so essentially, I feel like she does these things where it's just like a IOU basically. Like she's putting down a down payment, but she's like, I'm gonna marry you off to some rich old guy, and then we'll be able to fully pay for all the treatment you're getting. She sent both Elvira and Agnes to finishing school to get prepared for this ball and stuff. She didn't send Alma because Alma hasn't started her period yet, so she's essentially like, she's not even at a marriageable age yet, so we're not going to worry about her. We're going to get you two married because if you don't get married to the prince, you'll at least be able to get married to someone rich enough to help support us because that is the time period of which you had to depend on a man in order to support you because women couldn't work or anything. Well, okay, women worked, but you would to sustain the lifestyle that they live, they would need more than just like whatever wage they would be getting from like working in a factory or working on a farm or doing lace making or something. So, oh, okay. And then there's like a separate thing. I mean, so there's two women that run this like finishing school. One does works on like poise and posture. The other one works on like the dancing and like choreography because during the ball all the girls are going to come together and do this performance for the prince specifically, but for everyone. But I'm like, I feel like they're both like gay or whatever, because there's like a level of like shared glances and intimacy between them, Madame Vanya and Sophia von Cronenberg. Oh, by the way, this movie is Norwegian and it is spoken in like Norwegian, Polish, and Swedish, I think. So there's also that. I watched this with English subtitles on Shudder. Yeah, I kind of jumped into the story. Let me go back. So this is the directorial debut of Emilie Bl- Blockfield, who was developing the story during her thesis in a Norwegian film school. And at first, she was gonna do something about like it was like her dealing with like body issues, and she's gonna do something about like a character sort of talking to her vagina, and her vagina giving her um advice or whatever. But she was like, um, then she discovered David Cronenberg and like body horror and stuff. So she was like, "Oh, what if I reimagine this character, but as like the stepsister of Cinderella who cut off her foot to fit into Cinderella's shoe?" And so I kind of like thinking of this as like baby's first Cronenberg inspired film, and like baby's first body horror. Like I feel like this is a good movie to sort of ease someone into body horror as a genre, because there's definitely very squeamish parts, and it's very bloody and stuff, but it's not like super over the top. And I wouldn't say it's like subtle either. I'm like, no, we definitely do see her cut off her foot or like toes. Um and what's like, ooh, okay. So now getting back into the plot. So we see a scene where we see this first scene of Elvira getting her braces off, and then the mom is looking at sort of this like nose chart situation. So the doctor is just like, haha, which one do you want to go with? And she's like, I think she says number 7 or 6 or 7. And he's like, beautiful, perfect. I'm like, does the daughter have no say in what's going to happen to her body at all? I know she's the eldest, but damn. So, so, um, this is our first scene. Especially, there was kind of a setup with the nose too, because we see her bust a pimple. And I'm like, ugh, I hate pimple busting or whatever. Like it grosses me out. I'm just like, I can't see that. Or at least I can't see it on other people. I'm like, I'll do it to myself, but I don't want to watch that. Don't know how people can, but that's like one of the things where I'm like, look, don't want to see it. And so we get this whole scene where it's sort of this archaic nose job situation that she goes through, where he literally has a chisel and a hammer, and we literally see him hammer into her nose. He does it like I think twice, but we only see the first strike, and it's both the mom and her sister, not her stepsister Agnes, and the sister. And I feel like Alma was like, "Oh, I don't want to be a part of any of this beauty nonsense." So we kind of see her throughout the movie dressing more tomboyish and less girly, always hiding her hair and everything like that. So I was like, yeah, she does not want to be a part of any of this nonsense. Um, and so, and then we sort of, like, if you've seen any of the flyers or movie posters, there is like this, thing that's around the main character's nose now. Like, it's essentially a cast for her nose. And she, yeah, so she got a nose job now, and she's still going to finishing school. I'm like, no anesthesia. He just went for it. That was fucking crazy. I was like, this is, that's a lot. And then, she kind of gets taken aside by Sophie, who, again, is the one that teaches poise and everything. And like, both of them are both like, oh, she's just not good at all. Like her posture's bad. She can't dance. She can't keep up or anything. And Agnes keeps like outshining her, but it's very much like a one-sided competition, because Elvira, like, it's not like Elvira is second place. She's like close to last place, you know? So Sophie wants to see Elvira's new nose, even though it's not fully healed up. And she's like, wow, so beautiful. And she's like, I see myself in you because I also used to look like you or whatever. And I'm like, because there's also this other thing that's happening where people are like, oh, she's fat or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Fat where? I'm like, Jesus Christ, these fucking body issues. And so Sophie's like, I'm gonna give you this, and you can eat whatever you want and not have to worry about gaining weight. You'll even lose weight. And I was like, oh fuck, is this a fucking tapeworm? I fucking hate tapeworms. I remember forever ago hyper fixating on like tapeworms and stuff, and it's like the reason they're like very thin worms that are parasites that like can get into the human body, and you can eat, but it'll eat for you, so you'll be like insatiable for like a very long time until you just die because you're not getting any nutrients. And so it's tricky to also I think I'm mixing up my worm parasites, but and so it's called a tapeworm because they're really thin and skinny. And they end up getting like really, really long and really, really big. And I hate them. I'm like, I hate that they exist. I hate that they can somehow get into your body. Not that they could get into mine because one of the ways they get into you is through like eating like meat, like beef, I think specifically, or some other animal. But either way, I'm like, tapeworms. I hate it. I'm like, what happens after that? Oh, okay. So throughout all of this, we're seeing Elvira sort of have these like fantasies about the prince, and she's looking beautiful, and she has blonde hair. Mind you, she's a brunette in real life. And she's always reading the prince's book of poems where he's like yearning for someone or whatever. And I'm like, oh, she is delusional and fantasizing about this man. And that was the reason that it was reminding me of Pearl, because in Pearl, she's also delusional in thinking that once she's a star. I mean, there's that iconic scene, I'm a star, like where she's yelling, Mia Goth. Very well done. Um, but not only that, I mean, just to kind of talk about Pearl really quick, there is a scene where she is trying to audition for like a movie musical, and there's a dance sequence, and she imagines this whole amazing, fantastic dance sequence, and she gets the part, but then in reality, she does it, and then she goes on this killing spree. But neither here nor there. But not that Elvira goes on a killing spree. Honestly, this is definitely more body horror and dealing with body image. And in a lot of ways, it's like these are things put on Elvira and she might notice it about herself, but we don't fully know if like she's like taking everything to heart because her mom Rebecca is the one that's just like, I'm gonna fix this about you, I'm gonna fix this about you. We never really see Elvira like complain about these parts about herself. Like she kind of does later on in the movie, especially when she keeps seeing Agnes get picked over her. um and then this is a crazy scene too. So, basically Agnes has been fucking like the stable boy, right? Like that's like her lover and everything like that, and they've been fucking in the stable. And there's this fucking one I didn't think I was gonna see a penis in this movie. That happened. But I also didn't expect there to be this like very tasteful, artsy shot of like semen. And I'm saying semen because that's how tasteful and artsy this shot was. I was like, what the hell is like what's going on? This is crazy work. And Elvira catches this happening and she freaks out because she's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And she runs off and tells her mom, and her mom is disgusted because she's like, no, the prince needs someone who's a virgin. Like, like her future husband needs her to be a virgin. I'm disgusted with you. Like, how could you, like, with a stableman, like a stable boy, like not even someone who has like money or power or whatever, but this poor man, disgusted. So and this is how Agnes goes from being called Agnes to Cinderella and being thrown into doing like housework and stuff. And yeah, there's not, the mom is the one that's rude to her, and Elvira kind of just ignores, like both the sisters kind of ignore her. But she's not like bullied in how even me just talking about the original, like the Brothers Grimm story, the Brothers Grimm telling. Um so also her dad is dead. And he's still dead. And literally Agnes, now Cinderella, is like, can we Like, I see you spending all this money on her treatments and stuff. Can we do a funeral for him? He's like rotting. There's maggots. And Rebecca, the mom, is just like, no, I mean, we'll get there. And then we literally cut to a scene of like Agnes weeping at her. I don't want to say disgusting, but at her decaying. That's the word I was looking for. Decaying corpse of a dad with all these maggots and things crawling out of him. His body's more bloated now because that is what happens um, to a dead body. Um, like you kind of fill up with gases. It's so interesting. And let's see what happens after this. So now Cinderella is Cinderella. She's getting used to her life as though she weeps at her dad's like I was gonna say bedside. It's not really a bedside. It's just like where he is. She hasn't gone to the finishing school, which upsets Madame Vanya and Sophie because Madame Vanya picked Agnes to be like the center of the dancing. But of course Rebecca paid for Elvira to be the center, even though she's not that good. But again, I'm like, where is Rebecca getting all this money? And of course, Rebecca brings up the fact that she's widowed, she's old, like no man is gonna want her or want to marry her. But then we keep seeing her get some from young. Honestly, she keeps getting some from like younger guys. Actually, now that I think about it, like potential people that her daughters could marry. Um, and she's the one going around fucking these people. I'm like, goddamn, Rebecca just gets some. Okay, she's a bad bitch, I guess. Was she a good mom? I'm like, she doesn't give a fuck about Agnes. She's completely changing Elvira, and she is completely ignoring Alma because she can't marry her off. She can't sell her off. So yeah, not a great mom. I'm trying to think what happens now. Okay, so the ball's like coming up. Um, Rebecca wants to do more things to Elvira. Of course, of course. She pays a lot of money for this really expensive dress and a wig. And Cinderella wants to go to the ball, and she kind of sneaks into, I think she sneaks into Rebecca's room. It's either Rebecca or Elvira's room, and gets her mom's like gown that her mom left for her to wear. And then, of course, Rebecca and them find out, and Rebecca rips it to shreds. Well, she doesn't rip it to shreds, but she does destroy it. Essentially, she makes it unwearable. And then, of course, Cinderella is crying about this. But we're gonna put that to the side real quick because there's this crazy scene where Rebecca is kind of upsold these eyelashes. And I'm looking and thinking, I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, eyelashes. You know, you just glue it on. They're falsies. You glue it on, they're temporary. But apparently, back in the day, or at least back in the day that exists in this universe, they would sew those shits onto your eyelids, and I mean top and bottom. And I was like, now that's crazy work. If I was like live tweeting or whatever the hell it's called on Blue Sky, I meant to meant to tweet permanent falsies is crazy work, and then I just was like, "Ah, I'm gonna delete this when I saw that scene. But yeah, no, that shit was crazy work. I was like, I no, no. And then we actually do see the doctor. And okay, a layer of crazy is that he's like, there's this new anesthesia from the coca plant, and I was like, oh fuck, you don't mean cocaine because cocaine does come from the coca plant. That he pulls out, so he pulls out this powder and he wipes it in her eyes before sewing these falsies into her eyelids, and we do see some of that um procedure done. But of course, before he does it, he also fucking huffs the cocaine too. And I'm like, what the this is fucking this scene is crazy. Like this is crazy scene. Um and so I was like, ooh. Yeah, that scene was crazy. It's definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie though, because I didn't expect it. I didn't expect the cocaine part. Well, honestly, I didn't expect him to show in the falsies either. And then also one of the nurses had the falsies as well, and she was blind in one eye, and it was just like, okay, so is she gonna get blinded? And literally every time she gets these treatments, she's like out cold for like a week. She's like bedbound. Like her eyes are bloody and she's got like a rag over it. Oh, actually, okay, it was Elvira's bedroom that Cinderella got the dress from because now I remember. And is like, okay, she's like sleeping or like asleep. And at this point too, she's been eating and losing weight because the tapeworm is eating for her. You know, she's carrying a tapeworm. But because her mom this is like the one thing she does that her mom doesn't know about. So her mom doesn't know that she has this tapeworm and can eat whatever she wants. So Alma, well, actually no. This is like the one thing that Agnes, calling her Agnes, but that Cinderella does that's like a nicety for Elvira, where she actually just sneaks her food and gives her food and tries to take care of her. Um, in this way, like at nighttime, without telling Rebecca, essentially. And I was like, okay, well, girls supporting girls, I guess. And then, of course, Cinderella was like, you're losing your hair, actually, like in clumps. Which is again why Rebecca ends up getting her a wig. I'm like, what's she gonna sew the wig on her too? Damn. Also, the dress that Rebecca gets Elvira, it was ugly. It was ugly. It was an ugly dress. Oh, and it was so funny when the prince's people, well, the king and queen's people who declared that the prince was going to have a ball to find his wife came to the house, and women of marriageable age. This is when she was Agnes. Agnes introduced herself with her full name. This is the only reason I wanted to know her. I wanted to remember her full name. She says her full name, and he writes that on the invitation. And then she asked, oh, he asked Elvira for her name. And Elvira was like, my name's just Elvira. And he's like, no, Vaughn or whatever. And Agnes is just like, stepsister. She's my stepsister. But then he writes stepsister on the invitation. So later on at the ball, literally, he's like, Elvira, stepsister. And then the whole time he's like, Miss Stepsister enjoys walks and all this stuff. And I was just like, this fucking scene is crazy. I was like, this is kind of a funny movie. It has its fun little moments like that. And then trying to think what else happened. So we, of course, the ball, that what I just described happened at the ball. But to go back to Cinderella's story, Cinderella's tale, movies that exist, I think, from the early 2000s. I think one with Selena Gomez and the other with Hilary Duff. So funny. We've done Cinderella too many times. But it's a classic tale. It's a classic story. So just to go back to Cinderella, she's got the destroyed dress. She's crying at her dad's death bed, I guess. And then all of a sudden she sees this vision of her mom who's like glowing and sparkling because Cinderella is praying to her mom. And her mom's like, I got you, sis. I mean, I got you, daughter. Sis. I got you, daughter. And then all of a sudden, the maggots become these silkworms and they go over the dress and completely transform it and fix it and make it anew. And then they also create these like shoes that are really lovely. And then the mom's like, at midnight, everything's gonna change back. So you have to come back. So she shows up to the ball wearing this gorgeous dress and everything. Well, she's wearing like a blue dress and it's like silky and it's nice. It's nicer than Elvira's for sure. And Elvira's kind of fucked up because of the tapeworm. So we kind of see her go leave out and like kind of throw up the tapeworm a little bit and like, oh, that's disgusting. Blech, blech. why it looked like that. That's one of the few things that kind of affected me in this movie because I'm like, I hate tapeworms. I hate the idea of them. Why do they exist? Um, so of course, Cinderella gets to dance with the prince. And Elvira being delusional throughout this whole movie, she's the one that thinks that she's going to be with the prince, that this is her story, and that she is going to, in the end, have her happy ending with the prince. And it's like, no, you're not the main, like you're the main character, but that's not your story. And this, unfortunately, Cinderella is going to have the good fortune of marrying this prince, who kind of seemed like an asshole, honestly, because Elvira, further back in the movie, Elvira is like in the forest. She gets stuck in the forest because uh she's out there with Alma having a picnic, and they had a horse. And Elvira brings out the tapeworm egg, and Alma freaks the fuck out because she's like, why the fuck would you do this? This is gross. And then she takes the horse, and Elvira ends up having to walk all the way home, which is pretty far. So she ends up seeing the prince and like two of his like fucking dumbass friends. And of course, he's like, oh no, I would never fuck her. She's ugly. Because he sees her. And I'm like, God, why is he awful? And then like the two I was gonna say goons, but I'm like, goon doesn't mean that anymore, unfortunately. Or fortunately? I don't know. um his two henchmen, they're not but they're not evil. His two buddies are talking about like, oh, kind of. It almost sounded like they were talking about like raping people and shit. And I'm like, and the prince is just like, I'm like, what the fuck is ill, ill, brother, ill, with the prince. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course he's not this person. But and of course Elvira, even though she overhears this conversation, she's not turned off by it at all. And I'm like, okay, delusional, fun. But anyway, so Cinderella shows up. She doesn't have an invitation, but the prince is like, oh my god, you're beautiful. And I want to dance with you. You should stay. And this is, of course, after he calls Elvira beautiful and dances with her. And, she gets to at least dance with the prince for the night for a little bit before Cinderella shows up. And then Rebecca is sort of cruising and seeing, like, what man, honestly, that she could fuck. But also that she could sell her daughter to if the prince doesn't go for her. And yeah, so Cinderella dances, it becomes midnight. Elvira does see that Cinderella is Cinderella and kind of chases after her. And of course, she kind of meets Cinderella back home and is like, give me the shoe. Because, of course, the prince is like, whoever can fit the shoe is going to be my bride. And the prince, no, no. And then Elvira's like, give me the shoe. You have the shoe. I'm going to fit the shoe. And like, is talking to Rebecca, the mom, about like it was Cinderella that was there, and the mom's like, I'm just trying to fuck this guy. What do you like? Can y'all resolve this and shut up? And she's like, whatever, I don't care. Just go away. Get out of the hallway. And I'm like, God damn, mom just does not give a fuck. Um, and so Elvira's like, shit, I can't fucking fit this shoe. I'm just gonna cut off my toes. And I'm like, that's a very rational, jump. I love that. It isn't. But of course. And so we get the scene that mirrors the Brothers Grimm story of her chopping off her toes, and we do see her chop off her toes, and she doesn't fully chop them off, and the toes are kind of dangling, which was like, ugh, that's awful. And then, um, I think she makes a sound, and then of course, like the mom shows up, and then the guy she was fucking shows up and faints. Elvira faints too from like the blood loss and stuff. And then the mom's like, he has the other shoe. And then is like, we're gonna have to chop off your other toes so those toes can fit. And so the mom ends up chopping off her other toes, and I was like, God, what the fuck? This mom sucks. And then the prince shows up the next day, but Elvira, of course, has this fantasy of walking out, wearing the shoes, wearing a beautiful gown, the prince being like, "You're my bride," and everything. She has this fantasy, but wakes up from it. Cinderella, again, it's Cinderella's story. She's the one that ends up marrying the prince. Um, and even then, she talks to the stable boy like way in the beginning about how she has to marry the prince so that she can get money, but she's gonna always love the stable boy. And like, I don't know how real that is. um, but I mean, if that's what she's gonna do, she's gonna rescue that stable boy and have him as like a lover in a harem or something. A harem, a gaggle of men, if you will. Uh, and so we get the scene of Cinderella stepping out like Elvira thought she would, while Elvira crawls down the stairs and tries to stop her, and but doesn't. Alma sees this happening. She she had a plan this whole time. She's like, "We're leaving. I can't. Like, I love you, sister." Oh wait, actually, before that, right before that, um, Alma decides to pull the tapeworm out of Elvira, and it's just no, and that's like one of those squeamish parts of just like, that's gross. And it's just this huge tapeworm and multiple tapeworms and like eggs and everything, and it's just gross. It looks gross, but it's out of her, and it's huge. It's fucking huge. And Alma burns it, and it's disgusting. And then the crows pick at it, and I'm like, well, I don't know if they want to pick at that. I mean, it's dead, but is it dead? And so Alma sneaks into the mom's room. The mom's like about to give a blowjob to this young guy that she was sleeping with. The one that passed out from seeing the blood and her toes missing, Elvira's toes missing. And she Alma sneaks in, steals some jewelry or whatever, leaves, and helps Elvira down the stairs, who's just using her hands to go down the stairs instead of like walking. And Alma puts Elvira on the horse, and they kind of just ride off. And Alma's like, laughing and happy. She's missing like a tooth, and I'm like, oh, she went through all those braces and stuff, and now she's missing a tooth. Her hair is falling out. She's got no toes. But she at least she has her sister. At least her sister didn't abandon her after all of this. And yeah, that's kind of the end of the movie. What a journey. What a journey for sure. But I did enjoy it. It had some good moments. I really do think it is a good kind of like gateway into getting into body horror and that genre. Before getting into like deep Cronenberg and like the thing and stuff. So I'm like, yeah. So that's the first horror movie of the month, I guess, because we're in June now. Happy Pride, happy Pride. Woo, 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 woo. Be who you are for your pride. Yeah. LOL. I don't know if I'm gonna do any like gay specific horror movies or like gay thrillers or something. Maybe. I'll think about it. Um, but I have an idea of what I'm gonna do for the next pod because I'm like I think I'm gonna try to do horror movies leading up until October since it's the whole halfway to Halloween thing. Probably gonna watch them mostly on Shudder if they're available. Um, Depending on what I'm trying to watch, I might watch Clone Clown in the Cornfield, which I heard had pretty good reviews. Clowns aren't usually the thing that I watch, like clown related horror films or slashers or ever. Don't typically watch those. What else don't I typically watch? I've gone away from watching slashers for a while now. Clowns was never my thing. Oh, I wanted to go see Bring Her Back because I'm getting back into ghost stuff and possession stuff. I was like so obsessed with like ghost possession things in like high school. Like movies and stuff. And I just was like Paranormal Activity came out and I was just like, "Oh, this is kind of ugh, this is kind of boring. I don't I don't like this." Even though it was like found footage and it was from the same people that made the Salem Witch Project. I was gonna say the Salem Witch Trials. Was it Salem Witch Project? So let's see. Hey, it is definitely not called that movie. No. The Blair Witch Project. Jesus. Ooh, I was like, it's something witch project. I was thinking of the Blair Witch Project. So the people that made Paranormal Activity made the Blair Witch Project. And I remember that was my first found footage movie ever. And I didn't know what it was. And I watched it on TV. And I think that's the best possible way to watch that movie is if you watch it with no context and you go in blind and you've never heard of it before. Because then it's a great time after you watch it and realize, like, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to say anything in case whoever is listening has not seen it. But watch it and then tell me how you think, what you think. um, I'm still setting up my home and everything. I finally ordered a desk, so that's gonna be great. Because then I'm gonna start streaming games as like a fun little thing to do on like Twitch or whatever. And I think, yeah, I'm gonna end it there. Check out my archive at www.nwwitapod.com. I'm like, did I get that right? And like, I have to read it, I think, at the same time. In WWITA. I added an S. I added an S. Anyways, it's www.nwwitapod.com. For my archive, I'm VNoir on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube as well. It's V underscore noir on Instagram. And I'm gonna post like clips and everything from my pod on there. I'll also post it on my YouTube as well. And I'm like, subscribe, listen to me wherever you listen to podcasts. Hopefully, if you can't find me on your podcast thing, I will try to figure it out. Um, and see if I can get on there maybe. But yeah, I mean, this also uploads to YouTube as well. That's just V Noir. Um, there's a bunch of numbers after it. But either way, I will see y'all. I will, yeah, no, I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.